We're headed over a fiscal cliff. Medicare is going bankrupt and the soak-the-rich crowd won the election. Time to sell all your stocks and head to Singapore. Not quite. You can make good money in a stormy economy. You can preserve wealth in a country that doesn't respect it. The question of the moment is what grand bargain will come out of the negotiations between the Democrats who control the White House and Senate and the Republicans who control the House of Representatives. We'll speculate on possible outcomes and then turn to wealth-building strategies. A few of the strategies hinge on what Congress decides to do with the tax code in the next year. Most of them work under any plausible legislative outcome. Without an enactment by Congress and assent by President Obama, several drastic things happen on January 1st. The Bush tax cuts expire, sending rates back to where they were before 2001, and some federal operations, especially defense, suffer automatic spending cuts. Also due to expire or already expired, a 2-point cut in payroll taxes, a generous estate tax exemption, a safe harbor from the alternative minimum tax, and a large collection of small tax breaks that help either businesses or low and middle-income families. President Obama says he wants a bill that extends the tax cuts for families with incomes below $250,000 and that he'll veto a version that extends the cuts for wealthy taxpayers. The Republicans say they won't tolerate any tax rate increases. If there's no deal, either with the Congress adjourning in December or with the slightly more Democratic one being sworn in the next month, then this is what happens. The top federal rate goes from 35% to 39.6%. Backdoor tax increases involving itemized deductions and personal exemptions kick in. Taxes on long-term capital gains go up. Couples with total income above $250,000 pay a 3.8% surcharge on investment income, and the tax break for corporate dividends goes away. For high-incomers, the effect of all this is to push the tax on bond interest up from 35% to 44.6%, on capital gains from 15% to 25%, and on dividends from 15% to 44.6%. A similar confrontation in 2010 ended with the Republicans getting their way. The Bush tax cuts were extended for 2 years for all taxpayers. This time around the president has a little more leverage. Voters repudiated the trickle-down economics of Mitt Romney and, in California, endorsed a rate boost for high incomes. Obama doesn't have to think about being re-elected, and the $1.1 trillion budget deficit seems even less sustainable. Another downgrade of U.S. debt by rating agencies is probably around the corner. Andy Friedman, a Washington, D.C. tax lawyer for 3 decades, now makes his living at a firm called the Washington Update, advising investors what to expect from Congress and how to adjust their portfolios accordingly. His forecast: Obama stands firm on his pledge not to give a break to wealthy taxpayers but compromises by redefining wealthy. The Republicans could save some face if the cutoff point were moved up from $250,000 of income to $500,000. That kind of deal would settle rates for 2013. After that, a tax overhaul that cuts rates but restricts deductions is a possibility. But it's only a possibility, and it wouldn't be effective until 2014 at the soonest, Friedman predicts. Prosperous taxpayers, then, should figure on this: a low rate in 2012, a high probability of a high rate in 2013 and a chance of a low rate in 2014. The proper response is to accelerate income like a bonus from 2013 into 2012. The other side of this coin is that you can benefit by postponing itemized deductions. Make charitable contributions in January 2013 rather than December 2012. Also think about converting a chunk of your pre-tax IRA into an after-tax Roth IRA. Do that by December 31st and you'll pay tax at a low rate that you may never see again. If Congress surprises you next year with a tax overhaul that lowers marginal rates, just undo the transaction. You have until October 15, 2013 to reverse a 2012 Roth conversion, says Gregory Rosica, a tax partner at Ernst & Young. What are the odds of a tax overhaul during Obama's second term? In 1986, President Reagan engineered a rewrite of the tax code that lowered the top rate to 28% and partly paid for that cut by choking off commercial tax shelters. Don't count on a repeat performance, says John Buckley, a law professor at Georgetown who was working as a tax expert for Congress at the time of the Reagan tax coup. The biggest stumbling block is that the federal deficit is so much worse today. That's some point, Buckley says. The Federal Reserve and Chinese banks will have their fill of U.S. Treasury bonds. The federal government has to get its deficit down to a sustainable level, meaning a deficit no larger than the growth in nominal GDP. At the moment the deficit is roughly double that. What about curtailing itemized deductions as payment for lower rates? That would be problematic, says Buckley. Eliminating all deductions would be, besides politically close to impossible, surprisingly modest in its yield, good for only $2.5 trillion over a decade. The country may yet grow its way out of the fiscal crisis. But you have to allow for the rising cost of government, college and medical care. With that bleak reality in mind, consider these strategies for wealth building. Age 25 to 35. 1. Buy stocks. Brush off the ominous markup crash during election week. If you're buying to hold for 40 years, the fiscal cliff, the possibility of a recession in 2013 and the antics of a lame duck Congress don't matter. The ability of risky investments like stocks to reward long-term holders is what matters. Inside a tax-sheltered account like a 401k, the best option is a low-cost diversified stock fund. If your company plan has a brokerage window with low commissions, use an exchange-traded fund like the Schwab U.S. Broad Market Fund ticker SCHB, the Vanguard Total World Stock Fund VD, or the Vanguard Total U.S. Stock Market Fund VTI. Outside a tax-sheltered account, buying individual stocks can make sense as a way to lower your management costs and increase your opportunity to harvest capital losses. James Grant, the acerbic publisher of Grant's Interest Rate Observer, never has a kind word for profligate governments and the central bank money printers who sustain them. But even he found a stock on the Athens exchange that he liked. In February he told his readers to buy Meta, a constructor of power plants. It so happens that Meta has most of its payroll in Greece and gets most of its revenue from outside the country. That's a good combination. Including dividends, the stock is up 48% since Grant recommended it. What does Grant like now? MetLife, the life insurance company that would see an earnings uptick when the Federal Reserve stops suppressing interest rates. For an ETF portfolio built around sectors that should do well in a second Obama term, see box, page 120.